Welcome back to the Worldtellers podcast. We jump straight into recording in the middle of one of Finn's thoughts. So we hope you guys enjoy it. And as always, thanks for listening.
Sometimes it's like, man, this house is put together and it's like, this is a nice environment. It's comfortable. It's very clean. I like the aesthetic of it. I like the layout of the house. I like the furniture. It's decorated nicely. And to me, it's like that feels nice. And then you go to another house and it's like, I don't need to take my shoes off here. There's stains everywhere on the carpet and the rugs, going up the steps. There's smudges on all the walls. There's chaos everywhere. They clearly, life has overwhelmed them to a degree. That's just what I feel sometimes when I'm walking in. Like, you just get a sense of it. But it's like, same with the lighting in a room. Like, why does that affect, in a sense, our feeling and our mode? It's like, is that something we should just try to like be aware of and try to cultivate that order in our own lives, in our own houses? And like, or is it something that's like, that's something completely fleshly and worldly? Like, it literally does not matter if there's the chaos or if there's not. Should it matter? Like, should you strive to have some kind of cleanliness? And I'm like, I think those things are good things pointing towards the ultimate good, but they're not the ultimate thing. And if they become your consuming, and then there's something too about a house that feels very cluttered. Like, I feel like our house feels very cluttered sometimes. It's like, there's just stuff we don't need. It almost becomes a burden in your life that's just like, we just need to get rid of this. Like, an empty room sometimes feels nice. a cleared out space with less things cluttering.
And it's like the contemporary modern where it's just like a chair.
It's like all you need is a nice, comfortable chair that you really like to sit in. You don't need 10 chairs that you could sit in again. But anyway,
Why do you need one nice, comfortable chair?
It kind of makes
you
me
could
think
sit on the floor, I guess, too, or outside under the tree. I don't know. Anyways, I don't know why that thought even matters.
Well,
it's not.
I think about what did God tell Adam to do? Go tend the garden. So I think there's...
And what's the difference between a garden and nature? How do you know that you're in a garden
one
versus...
has order.
One
So
has like intelligent design behind it, in a sense.
Yeah. So I think that there's 100% something healthy. I think if your house is just... house is an example, whatever you want. If your life is a complete and utter mess, I think that there's probably an element that's not healthy.
Are we rolling?
We're rolling.
Brett just sneaks it on.
Welcome to the Worldtellers podcast.
Is that how it
I don't know.
For the sake of starting the podcast.
I mean, we can start.
Yeah, we've already talked for half an hour, so we're good. We'll just roll with it. Welcome.
I'll throw it in.
saying-
Go on that thread. I totally threw you off. But I didn't want to
we've
keep
talked
going
about
on
this
this.
before, but yeah, the gist of it is I think that there's people that are prone to being overly orderly to where that becomes a crutch or a paralysis in their life where they can never get beyond the putting this piece back in place and doing this over here to ever get beyond that, because I don't think that is the end itself. But I think order and structure can create an environment where it makes you not have to react every day, waking up like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. Now I got to do that. And your life is just a continual Groundhog's Day of like trying to play catch up. And so I think the order and structure can create the ability to flourish. But if the order and structure is the end itself, you're missing the mark. So I would say probably depends on each person, where it's like probably the Lord might want to draw me to being more one way, where it might draw somebody else to be more another way. Because I don't think going into a house that's just completely clean means that they're, what to say, a Christian's home. Doesn't necessarily just mean that that's because they're on the vine. Or
No.
So
Yeah.
I do think there's something healthy about having.
I think it's just all about balance.
Yeah. I think we're called to tend the field that we've been given.
Yeah.
I've thought about this too, so I don't want to rehash all but like our podcast last week, and I think in some, I'll re-listen to it, I think there's some degree where I think we're all in agreement. It's just maybe some of how like it fleshes out might have been talking past each other, and I'll be guilty of that because I'm probably pushed too much on the. It's not always this out there thing. It's the in the midst of everything. I guess would be my general perception of things. And so I think that being said, is being a good steward with what is in front of you and doing that with the intention of not just about me, but having a Christ-centeredness within that creates an environment to where people can be invited in because it's like, oh, we don't have to clean our house for the next 3 days to have somebody come over for dinner. It's like, yeah, we're good. Come over for the play date. Come over for this. Come over for that. Or, hey, we don't have to do all this today because we've already been chipping away at that continually. So we don't have to set this whole day apart to catch up. We've been continually doing that, so that gives us the availability to be present for something else. Those are my thoughts.
Well, yeah. When you were talking, kind of rehashing what we were talking about last week, the thought that struck me, it's like if because it's not like I would disagree with anything that you guys said last week, or be like, that's not right. It's like all of it felt
you
right.
Were part
all
of the
it
conversation
was true.
For a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you have to leave early again today?
No, I should be good, depending. But it's like I think sharing the gospel, evangelism, spreading the good news is key and paramount, and should be an orient like the north on our compass. But then it's not that a but and not so don't do that, so do this. It's just like, and what are what is the good news that we're telling people about? What is our experience with that good news that's transformed our lives, that actually would make somebody who hears the good news want to be like, yeah, I want what that guy has, or I want to participate in that lifestyle as well. Like there's something real there. There's something authentic. There's something life-changing and powerful in that good news that he's sharing. And there is, but I think so oftentimes, like as Christians, it's like, yes, we believe that, we're good there. We believe the gospel. Now we're saved. But then there's like still like just utter chaos in our lives. There's relational dysfunction. There's, and not to say that you have to have all that squared away to be a good Christian. I'm not saying that either. But it's why would the world be attracted to what we have to offer in the gospel if it has not transformed and changed our lives? Now, they might be drawn to the light and say, yes, I also want that. I see my need for that. And then others will be they don't want any part of it because it puts a light on their darkness. So there's got to be something real. There's got to be something there, I believe, for people to, I don't know.
Well, let me read this quote. So I got this book. It's by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And this is a quote this is in the prologue, and it's a quote about Bonhoeffer. So it says, for him, Bonhoeffer that is, Christianity can never be merely intellectual theory, doctrine divorced from life, or mystical emotion, but always it must be responsible, obedient action and the discipleship of Christ in every situation of concrete, everyday life, personal and public. I read that quote, and it was that moment where it's like, I had read a few pages, but like nothing that in that moment was just like, I felt like that was just like, yes, that rang so true to, I guess, my perception of what Christianity is there's an element like, I don't care about, I say this, I don't, that sounds bad. Like somebody's like, man, I had this awesome time at church today and this worship was just amazing. It's like, yeah, amen. But like, I want to like, did that have an impact on your Tuesday morning when you weren't at, because that's what I care about. And I think that's what life is made of. It's not made the times of the worship sessions. It's made of our life. And that quote right there is just like, Bonhoeffer didn't care about all this. It's like the concrete, practical, everyday of life, making that a Christ-centered reality. It's like, that's what I'm drawn to. And I'm not living that out perfectly, but that's like the orientation of where I want to be. Every aspect of my life where it's like, I don't have to be like, we got to cover this part up over here because I'm not there with God yet. It's like, I want to live a life where it's like, you could peel it back. Somebody could show up at our house, anything. And it's not like, oh, we put that away. Hurry up. It's like, no, I'm here because this is who I am. I'm a child of God. Mm-hmm. And like you said, though, we need to have a level of humility and recognize, like, we're not going to do that perfectly. And part of that being open is being like, man, I dropped the ball over here. And I'm not going to try and cover it up because Christianity would say, like, we should bring that forth and be like, man, I failed on this. So, anyway.
It makes me think of Galatians 5 when it's talking about, the fruits of the Spirit. And I think if we're walking by the Spirit, people will see the fruit of the Spirit in us. But when we're walking by the flesh and gratifying the desires of the flesh, it's very evident that we're not walking by the Spirit. And I think if we're walking by the Spirit, people will see Christ in us.
Right.
But, we're not going to be able to do that perfectly on this side of eternity.
Right.
That's why he says in 5:17 that the Spirit and the flesh are opposed to one another. And so it's just keeping that at the forefront of our minds of walking by the Spirit is, in my opinion, how we manifest Christ to the unbelieving world.
Right. Right. We talked after the podcast, and Jonathan's looking at potentially a new job and stuff, and we were talking about it. But one of the things Jonathan said, I think, is living a life in that situation, if that's an environment that he ends up going into, is living a life that's above reproach in that, because that career would mandate that it's not just an 8-hour workday. You're there for long durations of time. Some of that time is just kind of being there, and so just kind of living your life in the midst of that and always being on call. But you kept saying, like, being above reproach in that, because there's people there that may be believers, people there that may not be believers, and like living a life to where it's like in the midst of that reflecting Christ to the people around you. And it's like that is a perfect example of, I guess, kind of what I'm saying, and what I think that mentality, like in the midst of work in that place, viewing it as a mission field and living that a reflection of Christ, not just I know the right way to articulate the gospel in word, but living it out by deed as well.
The middle of the road is usually the right path.
It's the narrow path.
It's usually not either or. It's usually both.
Yeah, I think with anything in life, it's like what am I trading? Like, our whole lives are like trading something for something else, right? Like, so I'm trading my time to go to work so that we can have money to, be able to buy or do the things we want. Or like, everything is like that. It's like, okay, well, if I got to go to work, then I'm trading time with my family in order to go to work. Or if I'm, and so then some people have to like balance out, like, okay, well, is my pursuit of money worth so much? Like, you have some people that work like 70, 80 hours a week. You know what I mean? Like, people who are like extremely wealthy, but then they look back when they're 50 or 60 years old and they're like their family life was like non-existent. You know what I'm saying? That's obviously one extreme. But anyway, the whole point is, like, we trade things. And then there's, some people, like, I don't know, maybe like with the opposite of that, like a farmer or something, where it's like, okay, we're working our butts off, but we're doing it together, and we don't make a lot of money, but it's like, but this is the life we want. We want that fellowship with each other. We want, you know what I mean? So there's trades with everything we do in life, and I think the same is true with, like, like you're saying, Josiah, like I think if you asked every human being, it's like, hey, would you rather your house be like spotless clean and it look like it's something out of a magazine every day, or would you rather your house be, like, need to be cleaned up, or there's
like
stuff over here?
In?
Yeah, right. Like, you guys are like in the middle of living your life here, and it's like, I think everyone would obviously, well, I don't know of anyone who would say the second, but I think that too comes down to, like, like, what is being traded in order to keep, you know what I'm saying? And I think for each person, each family, or whatever, there's like it's finding that balance. And it's like that with anything. It's, like with sports or whatever, if you want to be the best golfer, like we talked about before, like there's a trade there. It's like, okay, well, I'm prioritizing this over whatever. And there's some things in life you may prioritize this over everything or this over just that, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm prioritizing, we want our kid to be good at soccer, so we're prioritizing that over whatever else, you know what I mean? And so I think all of our time, because time is finite, it's like trying to find that balance is,
I think trade-offs is a good word, a good way to think of it, because you are trading, you are giving, paying attention, time, focus, effort to certain things all the time. And you can't pay your attention, pay your time to everything at once. I do think, though, you can do all those things with the mind of Christ and in an attunement with the Lord at all times. So you're always, the deepest part of you always is paying your attention to and your focus on the Lord. And then I do think after that, it's what Brett said. It's a balance. It's if that is dialed in and squared away, and that's your main motivation and heart, there's going to be seasons. And I think it's like, I think sometimes I personally overthink it. Like, am I doing all the right things right now? It's like, sometimes it's like, no, right now, the time of the season is this. It's a time to plant. And later there'll be a time for harvest, and there'll also be a time to pull the weeds. And then there'll be a time to store up in the warehouse. And then there'll be a time to share with the people if there's a famine. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just using a farming analogy. But you get what I'm saying? So there's going to be seasonality to your life. There's seasonality even in the moment of the day. It's like there's a time when I get up and it's quiet. I have time by myself. Then there's a time when I'm out interacting with customers, driving, making notes, keeping things organized, making sure that I'm not dropping the ball on a customer, that I'm being responsive and as helpful as possible in every interaction when I'm at their house to try to help them solve their problem. Then it's, okay, now I'm back at home. Now it's, all right, you know what? Let's maybe set the phones aside and try to be intentional, focused with the family and the kids. So there's like a seasonality and a time and a place for that in the day. And then that might go on like that kind of lifestyle that we're in right now is like young kids, raising them up, toys all over the house. That's okay. That's the season of life that we're in right now. 5 years from now, it's not going to be exactly like this. It's going to be very different. I'll have a preteen daughter. I'll have older kids that are more independent than where they're at right now. Who knows what work or business would be like? I have no idea. So it's being intentional with what you're gifted with in the moment, always keeping your attention and focus and alignment correct with the Lord and walking in that in everything. And that's the forefront of your mind. And then that impacts everything from your relationships with friends and family. And I do think it will direct where you should be spending your time and treasure and where you should be putting those efforts in. And then it's like, walk in that in peace. Don't get constantly like, am I on the right path? It's like, man, just trust that the Lord is good and that he will guide you and that you will get clarity in that. And I guarantee you're not going to do it perfect. Mm-hmm. You're not going to live a life of zero regrets. And I'm not saying, oh, that's okay too. You can fail all you want. I'm just saying, like, we can get overly consumed on trying to get it dialed in just perfect. And then that's be where our focus is and stress and be like, I don't think I'm really doing it right. Or it's like walking, there's a peace and a joy, a freedom that comes from being like, well, I'm fully accepted in the Lord. And then guess what? Then your life looks different. And there's a difference about you that is authentic and real. So then when you interact with people and you're intentional because the Lord's on your mind and the forefront of it all the time, and you're constantly in that relationship with him, it spills over into interactions with people. As brief, you might not even be aware of the fact that they're seeing Christ in you. You could be oblivious to that, and probably it's good that you're oblivious to that, because you don't get puffed up with pride. But they might sense it. They might get a glimmer of it. Then you can be more explicit in the gospel. You share with them, like, look, this is what transformed my life. Christ is real. This is real. And you're experiencing that realness so that when you tell them that, there's an authenticity to it. But I think it should be, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Not that there's not trials and tribulations and difficulties, but it's like there is a peacefulness and a joy that should come along with our relationship with the Lord. And then it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think a case can be made for both sides. Like what you're saying, Josiah. I was just reading, I think it's in 1 Timothy, where it's talking about like if you strive to be a leader of the church. One of the things it says on there is someone who.
I've been in the Timothy's.
I just started reading the NLT, so I'm still like tapping in. I think it was NLT. I read it in 1 second. So it says in 1 Timothy 3:5, which God sends me to quite a bit, or in chapter 3, there's a trustworthy saying, if someone aspires to be a church leader, he desires an honorable position. So a church leader must be a man whose life is above reproach, must be faithful to his wife, he must exercise self-control, live wisely, and have a good reputation, must enjoy having guests in his home, and he must be able to teach. He must not be a heavy drinker or violent. He must be gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. Anyway, so but one of the things there is that has stuck out to me before is someone who loves to have people over to their house. I think that's an important thing for a leader of the church. And, so you have that side of it. And obviously, like, if your place is, like you're saying, lived in to the nth degree, it's like, okay, well, like, someone can't come over right now. You know what I mean? We got to find time for, it's just not like you have this open place for that. So on one hand, you have that. And then, but just yesterday, it's like I was reading, I did like Bible roulette or whatever. And I was calling my cousin. And I was like, whatever I land on, that's what I'm going to like leave him this message because I knew he was going to answer. Anyway, I'm just going to read through this if y'all will let me. But I don't know. I feel like it's part of, it resonates with what God's been putting in my heart lately, which is like, I don't know, just the idea of like, we serve the Lord, Like my life is to serve him. And so many times it's the other way around. I'm asking God to help me with this and with that. And, I know that it's my Father in heaven and he loves me. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's so easy to kind of get it twisted a little bit where it's like, you have to remember, like, I serve the Lord and my time on earth should be devoted to the Lord. But anyway, this is Isaiah 58. Shout with the voice of a trumpet blast. Shout aloud. Don't be timid. Tell my people Israel their sins. Yet they act so pious. They come to the temple every day and seem delighted to learn all about me. They act like a righteous nation that would never abandon the laws of their God. They ask me to take action on their behalf, pretending they want to be near me. We have fasted before you, they say. Why aren't you impressed? We have been very hard on ourselves, and you don't even notice it. I will tell you why, I respond. It's because you are fasting to please yourselves. Even while you fast, you keep oppressing your workers. What good is fasting when you keep on fighting and quarreling? This kind of fasting will never get you anywhere with me. You humble yourselves by going through the motions of penance, bowing your heads like reeds bending in the wind. You dress in burlap and cover yourself with ashes. Is this what you call fasting? Do you really think this will please the Lord? No, this is the kind of fasting I want. Free those who are wrongly imprisoned, lighten the burden of those who work for you, let the oppressed go free, and remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry and give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them, and do not hide from relatives who need your help. Then your salvation will come like the dawn, and your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind. Then when you call, the Lord will answer, "Yes, I am here." He will quickly reply. Remove the heavy yoke of oppression. Stop pointing your finger and spreading vicious rumors. Feed the hungry and help those in trouble. Then your light will shine out from the darkness, and the darkness around you will be as bright as noon. The Lord will guide you continually, giving you water when you are dry and restoring your strength. You will be like a well-watered garden, like an overflowing spring. Some of you will rebuild the deserted ruins of your cities. Then you will be known as a rebuilder of walls and a restorer of homes. Keep the Sabbath day holy. Don't pursue your own interests on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath and speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day, and don't follow your own desires or talk idly. Then the Lord will be your delight, and I will give you great honor and satisfy you with the inheritance I promised to your ancestor Jacob. I, the Lord, have spoken. It's like I read that, and I feel like it resonates with what I've been getting convicted on, which is like, what are you spending your time doing? You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like the last podcast and this one I don't know. But
See, when you read at least the beginning part, I didn't, and I think it's cool that you're getting something from it differently a little bit than I am. But for me, it was like you're doing all these things for the Lord that look good on the outside, but this is not at all what I desire. It's like there's no authenticity to your faith in me, is what God's calling the Israelites out on. It's like, yeah, you fast. You do the things, you're checking all the boxes, but none of this is real. Your heart is far from me. You're rushing around. You're trying to please this. You show up at the temple. You're in sackcloth and ashes, and you're fasting, and it's like none of this is important to me. Your heart is not anywhere where it needs to be. Your heart's bent is not towards me. It's towards pleasing your flesh through checking the boxes of what it looks like to be a moral person.
yeah,
And I'm like, that seems a lot. I mean, again, I'm part of this too, but it seems like the modern day church in America, it is very often that it's like we're checking boxes, we're trying to look good.
in my own life, I've experienced both almost to the fullest for moments of time, where it's like, oh no, I did all the things. I'm doing all the things. I'm like, I stopped doing this and I stopped drinking and I stopped doing that. And it's like, it's almost like it can come in and out during the week almost, where it's like, there's one point where you're trying to like live by the rules and do well as far as, hey, I'm checking these boxes off, or I'm doing what is supposed to be right. But then there's other times I've tasted that too, where it's like, I just want to be more near to God. And if that means if that means fasting and praying and whatever is going to just let me just feel his presence a little more and have that closeness with him, then it's like, oh my gosh, what a small price to pay. You know what I'm saying? And so there's that other aspect where it's just, I just want to draw near to him because I love him. And I do think that those things are, I don't know. I think both can exist in a healthy relationship with God, but there also needs to be both to exist in a healthy relationship with God,
It makes me think of somewhere in John. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's in the Bible.
It's in the book.
But it starts from a place from loving Christ. And by doing that, you will naturally follow his commandments. I think of trying to see how I want to frame this. Like, I don't go out into the world and not try to cheat on my wife. It's like, I love my wife. I would therefore never, that thought would never enter my mind.
Yeah, amen.
So, and it's very easy for us in our Christian life to be like, yeah, I need to check the boxes, and those are good things. But if it's not coming from a place of, I love the Lord, then it's kind of missing the mark. But I think it will ultimately always, if you love Christ, you will obey his commandments. Not perfectly, but the overarching trajectory of your life will look like that.
Yeah, I could take that analogy think about that. Because you have a genuine relationship with your wife, marriage, and you love her, you are not going around with the forefront of your mind, don't cheat today, don't cheat today, don't cheat today. It's like, it doesn't even enter your mind as a possibility for something that you would even do, because that's not your focus. Mm-hmm. You've got a wife that you love and you're in a relationship with her, and you're not focused on not doing these other things. And think about how different it would be if now you don't really love your wife, but you've been told that you should. And you're like, this is what you need to do. And you're like, I guess that's what I need to do. So you start trying to, quote unquote, love your wife. You're checking that box. But you're like, my desire is for all these other women, but I know that I shouldn't do that. So I'm really striving to love my wife. That's two totally different mode of beings. Both are manifesting in the way where you're not cheating, but one is completely consumed by not cheating, and you really don't love your wife, but you're focused on checking the box and doing the right thing. The other is, I'm not even worried about cheating because that's the furthest thought from my mind, because I'm in genuine relationship with my wife and I love her. Two very different things. I think you can
but,
draw that.
But at the same time, like, to go a different direction with a different sinful habit, when I used to dip, like I still face temptations to dip. Like, those aren't going to go away. So you do have to put up those safeguards in place, I guess I would say.
Yeah, just like with your wife, you have no intention of cheating on her, but there'll probably be situations where it'd be good to just avoid those things to begin with to prevent any unneeded, temptations there.
I hope that nobody rips this
Well,
out of context.
I do think what Jonathan brought, the why, I think is the ultimate, just like what he was reading in Isaiah 58. So the what has how many people are, we don't know, but we can use examples. People that were in ministry. I mean, that's what they were, pastoring churches, and who knows where it went wrong, maybe from the get-go or maybe just somewhere along the way. But it's like, then you see that like the covers pulled back, and it's like, this guy was not, whatever the motives were,
flesh
there
the
was
whole
something
time.
else, but he was doing all the right things, right? And so the what, or maybe you have these people where it's like, my dad brought this up from It's a Wonderful Life. Does everybody remember that movie? So there's the two brothers, the one that keeps getting stuck in the town to kind of manage it and do this, and then his other brother goes off and like wins the Medal of Honor, comes back at this parade and stuff. And so from one aspect, it's like that guy went off and served and did all this other stuff. And then there's this other guy just continually just doing the steady things, the behind the scenes, the mundane things, the basic things, but yet pretty much saves a whole community of people. And we normally want to be like, we should all be going to serve in World War II. And then it's like, and this guy over here is not serving the Lord because he's just doing the basic things, da 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 da. And then it's like, we just need to continually be checking ourselves and be like, what is the why? What is the why? What is the why? Because, and who knows, but and there's probably variations within the people in ministry and the people that aren't in ministry and the people that are working and the people that aren't like the whys and stuff, and those maybe within a day could fluctuate, like, oh, that was a little bit more fleshly oriented today, or that was a little bit more Christ oriented today. And it's like, I think it really comes back from a little bit what Fenn was like, if it's there to check boxes, it's a dead religion. If it's coming from a place of relationship and understanding that I'm going to trip up, I'm going to fall over, but I'm going to continue to want to dance with my Lord and Savior, it's, I think there's something healthy about that. So I'll share an example of this in my practical life. There was a few things I feel like literally there was just some super cool, awesome things this past week. But this past weekend, Chess and I took a half day Friday with the intention of going up to the mountains to go skiing on Saturday. And so that was the why we went to the mountains, was to go skiing. We stayed with a relative of Chessa's, and we knew it was a holiday weekend, but we decided that we would get up Saturday, hang out, eat some breakfast, and then go skiing that afternoon, which resulted in us not being able to go ski, because by the time we got to the slopes, it was literally, we spent 2.5 hours driving through Sugar Mountain and Beach Mountain, not finding any parking. It was like the worst situation. So the why of the weekend, and I would say the lowercase y of the weekend, was we failed. It was a failed mission. We went to the mountains to go skiing. We did not go skiing. But because we did not go skiing, that Saturday morning, I was able to have a very deep conversation with this relative and was able to share the gospel with him. And so the bigger why of my life, I wouldn't trade that for anything. We didn't go skiing. That was a fail to the lower why. But the bigger why, and there wasn't like, there was no like conversion in that moment, but there was a clear articulation of the gospel to somebody in a one-on-one intentional time. I didn't go up with that as we need to go up there to do this. But because there was an orientation, not that wasn't, I'm going to turn this mode on. It was a life trying to pursue the Lord and recognize his presence in the times when those things come available, to be intentional when those availabilities come around. And so but I'm just saying, like, there's a practical example of just like in my life where it's like this fail to one level, this bigger why was brought around. And so I think if we're living lives with orientations of that, we'll start to recognize that those opportunities are literally all around us all the time. I get back to the office, we're closed down Monday because it's Martin Luther King Day. Come to the office Tuesday, feeling a little stressed out because Friday I was a half day. We were closed Monday, and there's a lot of people that are open. So it's like I'm getting emails and stuff. I know I got a big day. I need to kind of pick up on a lot of things. I get into the office. 30 minutes into the day, somebody comes into the office, and this dude, I won't name names. But some of you have met him before. He's come to the home church a few times, and he comes in and to my work, complete disruption. But through that conversation, he's like, I need to get baptized. I need to get baptized. I was like, let's just do it this weekend. I was like, my parents got a hot tub. We can warm it up. It's going to be 20-something degrees. Let's just get baptized. Let's do it. Let's do it. Like, let's make it happen. He's like, all right, I'm in. Let's go get breakfast. And I'm like, I really cannot go. But I was like, all right, I'll go get breakfast with you. And so we were able to continue the conversation with that. Once again, what I'm saying is like, here's the thing. I'm in my workplace, and it's like, I had to, in that moment, be like, because I really was like, I'm stressed. Like, I need to work, but I'll take an hour to go do this with you. I don't do that perfectly all the time. So it's not like, oh, look at what you're saying. What I'm saying is the opportunities are around us at all times. And some of those interactions would never have taken place if it wasn't for like, I'm just going to be a good insurance agent. Because he came in because he also had to get some stuff done with an audit. So there was like that level to it too. There was a practical and then this higher why that's also always working in the background of our lives, because we're not walking around with like, I don't want to cheat on my wife. Just like there's a level where it's like, if I'm working on an Excel spreadsheet, like you can only think about one thing at a time. So there almost has to be this operating system operating in the background of this Christ orientation that is able to just pop in, and we have to be present and aware of that, because I can't just be sitting there in a state of all day just meditating on Jesus. I would like that. That would be super cool. But like the way we're wired, that doesn't seem to be the way. I haven't figured that out.
And we have responsibilities that God has put in front of us.
Right. So that's that being oriented to that awareness of when that why pops in, there's that bigger why that always trumps the lower whys. Even though the lower whys are part of life, right? The things that need to get done, the being a good steward, the being a good dad, all those things. But there's a bigger why that can trump that at any time. And when God wants to step in, we need to be like, okay, I'm going to orient to what he wants in this moment.
Amen.
It's good. Real quick, I just want to pay Josiah a compliment. Mackenzie's always like, when I listen to podcasts, I feel like I get what Josiah's saying better. I'm like, yeah, because I'm probably a little. Those are great, beautiful, excellent, perfect, like practical examples of what we like. What I often try to say, I think what we all often try to say about living in attunement with the Lord. It's like, yeah, but then what's that look like practically? And I think those two examples are like perfect examples of that. Because from the world's perspective, it was a fail on work that day, maybe. Like you lost time. You weren't as efficient as you could have been. You could have got more emails done. You could have, but it's like, that doesn't even matter. Like,
and then it comes back to the lower whys. Like, I want to be a good insurance agent. I don't want to drop the ball on these clients.
So people show up at your office.
So that's where you say like, hey, because I do struggle with this, the overanalyzing. Like, what is the better good in this moment? Should I go to get breakfast with this person, or should I be? And I do think that's an unhealthy aspect of me where it's like I can overanalyze it to a state of paralysis. It's like, should I be cleaning the dishes right now? Should I be present with the kids? Should I be? And sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm just going to trust the Lord with this. I'm going
to be faithful with what's in front of you.
Right. Well, sometimes you feel like there's multiple things in front of you.
Yeah, it just makes me think of what is it, the Good Samaritan? It was like, the couple people passed him by, and the guy was like, hey, it's just put right in front of me.
Well, I think about what Coach Lamb said when he was on this podcast. Those two words have rung true to me, and it's like be intentional and be available. Yeah. Intentional. That he didn't say that one, but that's life, right?
Because I had a situation present itself a couple weeks ago where I was just stopping to use the bathroom, and there was clearly a moment that God was like, "You need to deal with this situation," and it was felt like a fruitful interaction with someone. But it came after I sent out that thing about being interruptible. But it's like, just got to be.
That's normally how it works. You'll say something, God's like, all right, here's an opportunity. Well, I didn't mean it like that.
And I think as you take those opportunities in those moments, it's like you start to grow in wisdom, grow in understanding, grow in knowledge, but you can't just like not participate in those opportunities and step out in faith with the Lord and expect to be like growing in those dimensions. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not a sit back and got all my doctrine just right. It's like, all right, now when I lay these in front of you, that's where I think there's the growth, there's the development as you're walking with the Lord, taking those opportunities, those promptings of the Spirit, and being aware that those are promptings, and trusting that, hey, the Lord is trying to speak to me here. The Lord is trying to guide me here, as opposed to, no, I think that's just my own thought. Try to be more open and available to what the Lord's doing in your life. And I think you start to grow, and that's something I desire for my own walk, like be more trusting that the Lord is trying to guide you moment by moment, day by day, not just chalk it off to, that's a random thought I had. It's like, well, maybe the Lord's trying to have faith and trust in that there's those opportunities all the time, and try to be more aware of those.
I think awareness is, because as we become more aware of him, we start to realize like how awesome he is in more and more situations, and how he's always available and always present, and how he's always able to sustain and provide, and he's faithful. And it's like that's where the relationship starts to form. It's not in these little moments of like, that was my Bible time, I really felt the presence of the Lord there. It's like, but like if that doesn't transfer over, like you're checking a box, and
You're
I'm not saying that's a bad
what
box.
John just read.
No, well, yeah, I mean,
you
don't want to throw the baby
that.
out with the bathwater, because what I'm not saying is we should be doing those
Oh,
things.
absolutely.
But it's
yeah.
needs to be with the orientation of like, that is drawing my awareness to him, so that it carries into my life, not just
The Pharisees were the best at doing all the things from the power of the flesh.
That being said, there's a passage in Zephaniah where I'm not going to pull it up, but pretty much God's like, he's going to search Jerusalem with lamps and find all those that are just complacent, like, oh, God won't do anything good or bad, just kind of people that live in the state of complacency. Like, I'm a Christian, I don't need to have any level of intentionality and stuff. I'm just called to be a good dad, and once again, I'm not opposed to that, but I think maybe some of the pushback against maybe why I push so hard one way is the pushback is like, yeah, a lot of people will say that as a cover up to then live their life they want to live it. And we're probably all guilty of that. Just like people that are in ministry are probably guilty of it in their own regard. It's like, but there's this complacency, and I do think American Christianity is the epitome of a passage like that, where it's like just a complete level of complacency. And so I do think there's something healthy about being aware and being intentional.
What do you think, Brother Hayes?
Huh?
What do you think?
Where do I
I
start?
had to wake him up and kick his foot.
No, I'm just listening.
No,
I think
I'm giving you a hard time.
I think in order to actively seek to serve others and actively seek to, make new disciples who can then also themselves go out and serve the Lord. I think being a disciple yourself and having those times and being in prayer and serving God in everything you're doing, and being on the vine, and like you said before, just like doing the dishes and all that, while also praying and having that time with God, and just being in tune with the Lord throughout the day. I think that's a necessity. Like you have to have that in order to be able to truly go out and serve other people. And so I do agree that like that's where our heart should be first and foremost. And then if someone's asking me, I would say yes. I think that equips you to go and to go therefore. And so
Is it that passage? I should look it up, but isn't there something like go forth and make disciples, and then they name like 3 locations, like in Jerusalem and Samaria and to the ends of the earth or something? Anyway, I'll have to find it because you're giving me this. I feel like Brett would know.
No,
But there's this level. It's like do it locally, do it in the broader locality, and then do it across. And so I do think there's a level where it's like there's people that are called to be missionaries to these far off places. There's people that are called to be missionaries to X, Y, and Z. And then there's people that are called to be missionaries right here. And so I think it's like If every Christian in Charlotte's like, we need to go share the gospel, so we got to go all move to Africa. Or I was thinking about this last week, is like, if every Christian, I think this was from a C.S. Lewis thing, because it was kind of about this idea of like pacifism. This was during World War II. It's like, what if every Christian, no Christian served in the military? What if no Christian served in the police department? What if no Christian was an insurance agent? What if no Christian was a salesperson? What if it was like, no, that's not, there's nothing Christ-centered. Think about a society if every Christian's like, we can't be part of the workworkforce. Like, think about what, like, just play that out. And it's like, okay, that starts to get really weird, right? Or it could be like, what a lot of Christians do is like, I'm a Christian and I table that over here, and then I'm also this over here. And I think the more we can be a Christian in the midst of all the things in our vocation and whatever that may be, I think that's where you start to see the practical outworking of the kingdom of God is here. It's not some off in the distance thing. It's present and it's here. Anyway, I was just kind of going through that, I guess.
It's almost like you could ask the question, what would it look like for Jesus to be a 21st century firefighter? What does that look like? Jesus living that life. It's like, in a sense, or an insurance agent. What does it look like for Jesus to live that life? And the realization is like,
used car salesman,
Christ in you,
insurance agent are just too low.
Christ in you can live that life. Does that, like, there's an opportunity for...
Was that a cat? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I think I heard that.
I heard something, like a small child. Maybe it's
we also
cat.
have a daycare.
It might be the raccoon under the house.
There's definitely animals around this place.
What you're saying makes me think. So, was it last podcast I said something about like Christian hip hop or whatever? I think so.
I remember. I don't know if it was last one. We've done a lot of podcasts.
Closing in on a year.
It's not been a year yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
But
don't forget to get a picture.
Oh yeah, I'll forget
right now. Stop the podcast.
So there was, I don't know if it's still going on or not, but you had these certain Christian hip hop guys who they would want to kind of, instead of calling them Christian hip hop, they wanted to be referred to as hip hop artists who were Christians. Like, it was somehow offensive that they were being, like, they wanted to separate the two. And what you were saying just kind of makes me, like, that's what we want to do is, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I'm also an insurance agent. It's like, no, I'm both. And it just goes back to the whole silo thing. I think that's such the biggest issue in American Christianity.
And it's the biggest issue in my own life.
Yeah.
It's the biggest issue because I say all these things, but there's so many times where I just get caught up in the thing that I'm doing. And then, like, somewhere along, I would say I've been growing in the awareness, but there's so many times where it's like, we talked a little bit about it on Sunday, and I don't want to relay Alicia's story, but she kind of was sharing how she was with a family member, and it was a stressful situation, trying to get something, just a practical thing, need to get done with the car, and it was kind of stressful. And in the midst of it, she realized, like, hey, the Lord kind of checked her heart, and she was kind of like, hey, this is an opportunity where I can be a witness to this relative that's with me. And she picked that up along the way. There's so many times where I pick that up once the situation is gone. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, God, I wish I was more aware in that moment that I could have been operating with the mentality of, like, can I be Christ in me in this moment? And so, anyway, yeah, it's just, I mean, that's my issue with life is siloing things.
And the more that we commune with God, that starts to shift and change, and we start to become more aware of those.
Right.
I mean, I've seen that in Alicia's life for sure. Like,
yeah, I mean, she
was just way out there.
I mean, she was really kind of.
No, but I mean, it's the more that you pursue God, your life is going to. That's what your life is going to look like. How can it not?
Right. Well, so on Sunday morning, Uriah and Adeline, towards the end, went into a room and locked the door. And so they're 3 and 4. So I don't think there's anything. But like, Brett and I are over there like, open the door. And anyway, we were talking about it a little bit later, and I was like, I feel like that's what we do to God. It's like we have these doors that are closed and locked off, and it's like, well, God can't. And we're probably not even fully aware of it. But there's so many areas in life where we just do that unintentionally. It's like the door's locked. It's like, this isn't a God thing. And as opposed to what what I was doing was like, open the door, like, kind of, you're going to get a spanking, open the door right now. God doesn't barge that he could open the door, but God's like, just subtle whispers like, open the door. Let me in there. Open the door. Let me in there. And it's like, what areas of my life, Lord, do I have the door closed and I'm not even aware of that? Lord, can you help remind me to open the door and let you into this? I want my whole house, my whole life to be filled with you, not just certain segments of it. I don't want to segment you off. I want to have an abundant life in and through you. And that can only come in and through you.
It's good.
I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, spot on.
Am I spot on, Jonathan?
Huh? No, I think we all have things that we kind of shut out, unintentionally, or maybe even like subconsciously, places we're not letting the Lord into. And I think it's a good word. I think being open, and I think, well, from my own experience, like being open to letting myself be interruptible, and there's a lot of times, like you're saying at the mountain trip or whatever, there's times you start to recognize and be thankful for moments where it's like, oh Lord, this conversation could actually be, you recognize it on the front end, and then you have a conversation and you're thanking God after. It's like, oh Lord, thank you for that, like using me in that moment. And I think the more that we answer that, and the more that we respond to that, the more those situations start to occur, especially if we're praying for them. And then I think that as that grows, and I'll back up for a second, if we shut that down and we don't take advantage of those opportunities, then it'll just stop right there. And like you were saying, God is just whispering, and it's like, okay, like we can, He's waiting on you in order to submit to wanting to be a part of that call. And so I think as we submit more and more, there become more and more opportunities, especially if we're praying for them. And then each one of those things is going to kind of stretch and grow. And there's going to be a lot of, just like anything else in our relationship or anything else in general, as things are growing and as things are starting to push you out of your comfort zone, then there's growth there. And then you start to realize, I didn't actually need that before. I thought I did. But now I'm starting to realize that I can rely on God in those areas. And when the house is messy or whatever, it's like, okay, well, now I'm just having to rely on God more. Or we just had a new baby, so now I don't get all the sleep that I wanted or whatever, but now I'm having to rely on God more. And so as He's starting to use our lives more and more for His glory, actively in the lives of other people and serving other people, it also opens the door at the same time to trust Him more and to rely on Him more. And even though I'm not as comfortable as I was, I'm still spiritually more like leaning on Him and closer to Him, because the situation has forced me to be that way. And at any point I could stop that and say, no, Lord, this is enough. I'm done. And I wouldn't say that. No one would say that, but it would just be what you've chosen to do by not allowing Him to let you stretch and grow even more into that kind of the unknown and the uncomfortable.
I've heard like maturing in your Christian faith is, how was it put? Like a deepening dependency on God. I can't remember exactly how it was put.
Independently dependent.
Independently dependent.
Was that you that said that a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
It's good, Brett. Really good, Brett Lee.
Yeah. Amen.
Honey Brett. Get in the honey Brett. The little wisdom of the day. I don't know.
Are we going to leave it there?
Dude, I could say so many things.
We know.
Type all these words.
I'm good.
Yeah, amen.
Y'all good?
Yeah.
Close us out, John. I think we're
Man,
good.
what a race to the end there, guys.
should we
For all,
fizzled
for
out
all
there.
the listeners that hung out for that last minute as we
Pause a little
weighed
longer.
out whether we were going to close it out or not.
By the way, Finn, your wife,
should all just
your
be
wife
silent.
listens to the podcast.
She does occasionally.
We should just pick
Just to
moments
tell me how she resonates with my
where we
brother,
all
not
just
me.
go dead silent for like 30 seconds. As people are checking their phone to see if it cut off, or you know what I mean. And they're like, we're back.
We can weed out the last 5 people that listen to the podcast.
Yeah, perfect.
We're trying to get the viewership down to 0.
Yeah.
What is
Right.
the viewership at? Should we talk about that
I
off
don't
air?
even know. I haven't really checked. Not really worried about the numbers.
I just would be interested to.
I don't know. I'll go back and check and send you guys out
What
a
if-
report.
Dude, this is for real. What if at the beginning of our podcast, if we just kind of welcome come on for a minute, and then just have a moment where anyone who is listening can just stop and pray and ask that God will, give them ears to hear if there's anything we've said that's glorifying at all, or that is edifying at all, Yeah. A little side note. We should talk about that after the podcast.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh yeah. Lord, thank you for this morning, and thank you for giving us relationships within our families and within friends, and with people who start out as strangers and become friends. And God, we just thank you for all the relationships that you've given us and put in our lives, and also for our relationship with you, Lord, which allows us to really pour into those relationships from a place of love and from true joy and just contentment already, just because we have our relationship with you, God. I just thank you for those moments, and for ourselves and for everyone listening, Lord. I just and for myself, Lord, I just ask you just continue to let those situations, places we can serve you, to enter into our spheres. And Lord, I just ask you just give us the confidence and the faith and the belief and the trust to be able to step into those moments and to serve you in the way that you would want to be served. God, I just ask you just constantly be challenging us on those moments, and also too giving us, equipping us with the ability to actually answer those calls. And Lord, we just love you and we thank you. Amen.
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 Until next time.